Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. The time is 3:32 p.m. on Monday, the 9th of February 2026. And here in Brisbane, Australia, it's currently 30 degrees Celsius. It's feeling very hot today. I didn't even put the birds outside. It feels oppressively hot. And I've just finished, not long ago, cleaning both their cages, so they're cleaned up for the rest of the week, and they're happy little birdie boys. My preference is to be out in the garden, but it is what it is. Let me just put the charger in just for a moment. Running low on battery. Right, there we go. So, although it's very hot and I feel a bit bedraggled, I've just had a lovely lunch. I cooked up a big mince with stir-fried vegetables and pasta and just smushed it all together. So, had 2 big bowls of that. Was hungry. And the other big bowls, there's 4 big bowls I'll freeze down for nights or days when I feel like a bit of lunch or dinner and I don't feel like cooking. I often do that, cook enough in bulk to have leftovers to put away for emergencies when it's an emergency when I don't feel like cooking, people of Earth. It's not one of my favourite things to do, but must have been in the mood this afternoon because I was hungry and therefore I cooked. I still want to go later on, maybe this evening, when it cools down, and make a baba ganoush, but I guess it could wait until tomorrow. And so I have these little type sort of episodes where I actually do feel like making things, which is rare. So then I put things aside because I don't always feel like doing anything, people of Earth, especially in the heat. It's been really hot lately. But we won't complain because on the other side of the planet, everyone's feeling cold and miserable. So, you know, it'll be our turn in a few more months' time. So there is that. But of course, we don't get snow and ice here in Brisbane. Very rarely. It has to be a very rare event to get that cold. But I thought I would continue reading to you. I was considering last evening taking a bit of a break, but I thought, no, we'll carry on with reading lovely stories about the animals and the birds. And the sweetness is that our wild birds here and at my Sacred Space, Titania's Realm Garden, come to join with us and listen in too, so it's actually quite delightful. So, Birds, Beasts and Relatives is dedicated to Theodore Stephanides in gratitude for laughter and for learning. And like the other book, it comes in 3 different parts with an epilogue. But I won't bother reading all the chapters. We'll read them as we come to them, people of Earth. Conversation. It had been a hard winter, and even when spring was supposed to have taken over, the crocuses, which seemed to have a touching and unshaken faith in the seasons, were having to push their way grimly through a thin crust of snow. The sky was low and grey, liable to discharge another fall of snow at any minute, and a biting wind howled around the house. Taken altogether, Weather conditions were not ideal for a family reunion, particularly when it was my family. It was a pity, I felt, that when they had all foregathered in England for the first time since World War II, they should be treated to something approaching a blizzard. It did not bring out the best in them. It made them more touchy than usual, quicker to take offence, and less likely to lend a sympathetic ear to anyone's point of view but their own. They were grouped like a pride of moody lions round a fire so large and flamboyant that there was immediate danger of it setting fire to the chimney. My sister Margot had just added to it by the simple method of dragging in the carcass of a small tree from the garden and pushing one end into the fireplace, while the remainder of the trunk lay across the hearth rug. My mother was knitting, but you could tell by the slightly vacant look on her face and the way her lips moved occasionally as if she were in silent prayer that she was really occupied with the menu of tomorrow's lunch. My brother Leslie was buried behind a large manual on ballistics, while my elder brother Lawrence, clad in a roll-top pullover of the type usually worn by fishermen, several sizes too large for him, was standing by the window, sneezing wetly and irregularly into a large scarlet handkerchief. "Really, this is a frightful country," he said, turning on us belligerently, as though we were all directly responsible for the climatic conditions prevailing. You set foot on shore at Dover and you're met by a positive barrage of cold germs. Do you realise that this is the first cold I've had in 12 years? Simply because I had the sense to keep away from Pudding Island. Everyone I've met so far has a cold. The entire population of the British Isles seems to do absolutely nothing from one year's end to another except shuffle around in small circles, sneezing voluptuously into each other's faces. A sort of merry-go-round of reinfection. Bit like New Zealand during my childhood too. It's the trouble when you live in cold climates is you get sick more frequently. It's par for the course. What chance of survival has one got? Just because you've caught a cold, you carry on as though the world was coming to an end, said Margot. I can't understand why men always make such a fuss. Apparently they feel it worse than we females. Don't know how true that is, but they all do tend to carry on like little babies while we're expected to carry on with the birthing and schlepping and labouring and carrying and fetching while they lie in bed languishing, pretending they're dying. I guess it's their one chance to, have a bit of a break, I suppose. So they put on a bit of an extra turn, just to justify their need to lie in bed with the flu or the cough or whatever else is being invented or spread about in that time frame. Larry gave her a withering look from watering eyes. The trouble with you is that you like being martyrs. No one free from masochistic tendencies would stay in this a virus's paradise. He's got a point there, you know. Why would you choose to live in a place that's cold and miserable and in which you're always sick? That was my philosophy when I came to Brisbane and ended up being always sick here instead. Different things, but equally unpleasant. Sometimes you just can't win, people of Earth. He continues on. You've all stagnated. You like wallowing here in a sea of infection. One excuses people who have never known anything else, but you all had a taste of the sun in Greece. You should know better. Yes, dear, said Mother soothingly, but you've just come at a bad time. It can be very nice, you know, in the spring, for example. Larry glared at her. I hate to jolt you out of your Rip Van Winkle-like trance, he said, but this is supposed to be the spring. And look at it. You need a team of huskies to go down to post a letter. Half an inch of snow, snorted Margot. You do exaggerate. I agree with Larry, Leslie said, appearing from behind his book suddenly. It's bloody cold out. Makes you feel you don't want to do anything. You can't even get any decent shooting. Just notice my hair's wonky. Do we care? No. Carry on, people. Carry on. Exactly, said Larry triumphantly. While in a sensible country like Greece, one would be having breakfast outside and then going down to the sea for a morning bathe. Here, my teeth chatter so much, it's only with difficulty that I can eat any breakfast. I do wish you'd stop harping on Greece, said Leslie. It reminds me of that bloody book of Jerry's. Took me ages to live that down. Took you ages, said Larry caustically. What about me? You've no idea what damage that Dickens-like caricature did to my literary image. But the way he wrote about me, you would think I never thought about anything but guns and boats, said Leslie. Well, you never do think about anything but guns and boats. I was the one who suffered most, said Margot. He did nothing but talk about my acne. I thought it was quite an accurate picture of you all, said Mother, but he made me out to be a positive imbecile. I wouldn't mind being lampooned in decent prose, Larry pointed out, blowing his nose vigorously, but to be lampooned in bad English is unbearable. The title alone is insulting, said Margot. My family and other animals. I get sick of people saying, and which other animal are you? I thought the title was rather funny, dear, said Mother. The only thing I thought was, that he hadn't used all the best stories. Yes, I agree, said Leslie. What best stories? Larry demanded suspiciously. Well, what about the time you sailed Max's yacht around the island? That was damned funny. If that story had appeared in print, I would have sued him. I don't see why. It was very funny, said Margot. And what about the time you took up spiritualism? Supposing he'd written about that, I suppose you'd enjoy that? Inquired Laurie caustically. No, I would not. He couldn't write that, said Margot in horror. Well, there you are, said Larry in triumph. And what about Leslie's court case? I don't see why you have to bring me into it, said Leslie. You were the one who was going on about him not using the best incidents, Larry pointed out. Yes, I've forgotten about those stories, said Mother, chuckling. I think they were funnier than the ones you used, Jerry. I'm glad you think that, I said thoughtfully. Why? Asked Larry, glaring at me. Because I've decided to write another book on Corfu and use all those stories, I explained innocently. Ah, there you are, little handsome bird. Thought I could hear you chewing behind me. The uproar was immediate. I forbid it, roared Larry, sneezing violently. I absolutely forbid it. You're not to write about my spiritualism, Margot cried out. Mother, tell him he's not to write about that. I rather wish he would. Spiritualism's a very interesting topic. How often do I have spirits jump in when I'm reading stories on YouTube? Fairly regularly. Often unexpected and uninvited and taking me by some sort of surprise. Right. Mother, tell him he's not to write about that. Nor my court case, snarled Leslie. I won't have it. And if you so much as mention yachts, Larry began. Larry, dear, do keep your voice down, said Mother. Well, forbid him to write a sequel then, shouted Larry. Don't be silly, dear. I can't stop him, said Mother. Someone with a very large dog walking past. The dogs just randomly stopped and stared at the house opposite. Oh well, they're moving on now. Wonder what the dogs saw. Do you want it all to happen again? Demanded Larry hoarsely. The bank writing to ask you if you will kindly remove your overdraft. The tradesman looking at you askance. Anonymous parcels full of straitjackets being left on the doorstep. Being cut dead by all the relatives. You are supposed to be the head of the family. Stop him writing it. You do exaggerate, Larry dear, said Mother. Anyway, I can't stop him if he wants to write it. I don't think it will do any harm, and those stories are the best ones, I think. I don't see why he shouldn't write a sequel. The family rose in a body and told her loudly and vociferously why I should not write a sequel. I waited for the noise to die down. And apart from those stories, there are quite a number of others, I said. Which ones, dear? Inquired Mother. The family, red-faced, bristling, glowered at me in an expectant silence. Well, I said thoughtfully, I want to give a description of your love affair with Captain Creech, Mother. What? Squeaked Mother. You'll do no such thing. Love affair with that disgusting old creature? Indeed, I won't have you writing about that. Well, I think that's the best story of the lot, said Larry unctuously. The vibrant passion of the romance, the sweet, archaic charm of the leading man, the way you led the poor old chap on. Oh, do be quiet, Larry, said Mother crossly. You do make me angry when you talk like that. I don't think it's a good idea for you to write this book, Jerry. I second that, said Larry. If you publish, we'll sue you in a body, meaning the whole lot of them will sue her, not just as a body. English can be a funny language. Very funny indeed, and a bit odd. But faced with such a firm and united family, bristling in their resolve to prevent me at all costs, there was only one thing I could do. I sat down and wrote this book. Writing something of this sort presents many pitfalls for the author. His new readers do not want to be constantly irritated by references to a previous book that they have not read. And the ones who have read the previous book do not want to be irritated by constant repetitions of events with which they are familiar. I hope that I've managed to steer a fairly steady course between the two. Part 1. Pirama. Pirama? Pirama. P-E-R-A-M-A. Don't know what that is, but I guess we're about to find out, babies. My fellow planet Earthlings and all other interdimensional beings of the love, light, truth, curiosity, intellect, knowledge, power, sweetness, goodness, kindness, and veracity. Abundance and prosperity and healing. Let's ask for it all while we're at it, people of Earth. Let's ask for it all. Oh, I forgot the bit about true, heartfelt, genuine, authentic, love of the good, healthy, constructive, supportive, nurturing, motivating, encouraging, loyal, faithful, kind, because I'm a psychedelic dreamer and I still believe in dreaming up, manifesting up a true love partnership for myself Why do I bother after all these years? I don't know. I guess it's a long-standing habit and a triumph over adversity and perversity and ignoble debaucheries that I've already outlived and outgrown and outran and outsourced. Let someone else deal with that mess. Not my monkey, not my circus. Am I right? Right. Perama or Perama. Here great trees, cool shaded grow, pear, pomegranate, rich apple, honey, sweet fig, and blossoming olive, forever bearing fruit, winter and summer never stripped, but ever blowing the western wind brings fruit to birth and ripens others. Pear follows pear, apple after apple grows, fig after fig, and grape yields grape again. Homer. Chapter 1. The Christening. The island lies off the Albanian and Greek coastlines, like a long, rust-eroded scimitar. Scimitar. The hilt of the scimitar is the mountain region of the island, for the most part, barren and stony, with towering rock cliffs haunted by blue rock thrushes and peregrine falcons. In the valleys in this mountain region, however, where water gushes plentifully from the red and gold rocks, you get forests of almond and walnut trees, casting shade as cool as a well, thick battalions of spear-like cypress and silver-trunked fig trees with leaves as large as a salver. Lorikeets are here, my boys. The blade of the scimitar is made up of rolling, greeny silver eider downs. Turkey just jumped up. I've got no food out, they ate it all yesterday. You ate a lot yesterday, my boy. He's gone off on his way, he's not all that hungry. I guess he'll ask me if they genuinely are hungry. They'll let me know. Right, where were we? The blade of the scimitar is made up of rolling, greeny, silver eider downs of giant olive trees, some reputedly over 500 years old, and each one unique in its hunched, arthritic shape, its trunk pitted with 100 holes, like pumice stone. Towards the tip of the blade you have Lefkimi, with its twinkling, eye-aching sand dunes and great salt marshes decorated with acres of bamboos that creak and rustle and whisper to each other surreptitiously. The island is called Corfu. That August, when we arrived, the island lay breathless and sun-drugged in a smouldering peacock blue sea under a sky that had been faded to a pale powder blue by the fierce rays of the sun. Our reasons for packing up and leaving the gloomy shores of England were somewhat nebulous, but based loosely on the fact that we were tired of the drab suburbanness of life in England and its accompanying bleak and unpleasant climate. So we had fled to Corfu, hoping that the sunshine of Greece would cure us of the mental and physical inertia which so long a sojourn in England had brought about. Very soon after we had landed, we had acquired our first villa and our first friend on the island. The friend was Spiro, a waddling barrel-shaped man with huge, powerful hands and a brown, leathery, scowling face. He had perfected an odd but adequate command over English, and he possessed an ancient dodge, which he used as a taxi. We soon found that Spiro, like most of the Corfu characters, was unique. There seemed to be no one that he did not know and nothing that he could not obtain or get done for you. Even the most bizarre requests from the family would be met by him with the remark, "Don't use worries about that. I'll fixes that." And fix it he would. His first major piece of fixing was the acquisition of our villa, for Mother had been insistent that we must have a bathroom, and this very necessary adjunct of wholesome living was in short supply in Corfu. But, needless to say, Spiro knew of a villa with a bath, and very soon, after much shouting and roaring, gesticulation, sweating and waddling to and fro, carrying armfuls of our goods and chattels, Spiro had us safely installed. From that moment, he ceased to merely be a taxi driver that we hired and became our guide, philosopher, and friend. Just gonna close the blind. Close the window too while I'm at it. Not that close. Right. Oh. I've got to dust that blind. It's a white blind and it shows all the dust. Oh, more work. More work, more work. But anyway, it'll happen when I'm not too tired. That's the turkeys asking. It'll happen when I'm not too tired or in the right mood. No, they can go without today. They had a lot yesterday. They had 2 bowls, big massive bowls full. Why is that not closed? It's stabbing me right in the eyeball. You can't be having that, people of Earth. You just can't. It's a tiny bit better. Right. The lorikeets are lorikeets eating the flowers of the umbrella tree, and a little Indian myna bird is attacking the lorikeet who's trying to eat. I'm going to have to give them some. They're going to drive me nuts knocking that bowl constantly. I did say they'd ask, didn't I? I'll be back. I won't be long. Oh, would you enjoy some food? Right, that should resolve that situation. Stop him banging and disrupting our reading. Right. It's funny that they come quite late in the afternoon now and ask for food. They were coming in the mornings, but now they're just sauntering in the afternoon. But it's all good. Doesn't really matter. Yes, Kermie, the turkeys are here, demanding tribute. They're very busy birds. Very busy birdies like my boys. Right. My boys are a bit disappointed they didn't get to go outside today. Pardon me, but it is what it is. The villa that Spiro had found was shaped not unlike a brick and was a bright crushed strawberry pink with green shutters. It crouched in a cathedral-like grove of olives that sloped down the hillside to the sea, and it was surrounded by a pocket handkerchief-sized garden, the flower beds laid out with a geometrical accuracy so dear to the Victorians, and the whole thing guarded by a tall, thick hedge of fuchsias that rustled mysteriously with birds. Coming, as we had done, from a number of years' torture in the cold grey of England, the sunshine and the brilliant colours and scents it evoked acted on us all like a heady draught of wine. It affected each member of the family in a different way. Larry wandered about in a sort of daze, periodically quoting long stanzas of poetry to Mother, who either did not listen or else said, "Very nice, dear," absently. She, entranced by the variety of fruit and vegetables available, spent most of her time closeted in the kitchen, preparing complicated and delicious menus for every meal. Margot, convinced that the sunshine would do for her acne what all the pills and potions of the medical profession had so far failed to do, sunbathed with strenuous earnestness in the olive groves, and in consequence got herself badly burned. Leslie discovered, to his delight, that one could purchase lethal weapons without a permit in Greece, and so he kept disappearing into town and reappearing, carrying a variety of fowling pieces ranging from ancient Turkish muzzle loaders to revolvers and shotguns. As he insisted on practicing with each new acquisition, our nerves became somewhat frayed. And as Larry remarked somewhat bitterly, it was rather like living in a villa surrounded by revolutionary forces. The garden, for long untended, was an overgrown riot of uninhibited flowers and weeds, in which whirled, squeaked, rustled and jumped a multicoloured merry-go-round of insect life. And so it was the garden that held my immediate attention. However luxurious our various gardens had been in England, they had never provided me with such an assortment of living creatures. I found myself prey to the most curious sensation of unreality. It was rather like being born for the first time. In that brilliant, brittle light, I could appreciate the true huntsman's red of a ladybird's wing case, the magnificent chocolate and amber of an earwig, and the deep shining agate of the ants. Then I could feast my eyes on a bewildering number of creatures unfamiliar to me. The great furry carpenter bees, which prowled like electric blue teddy bears, humming to themselves from flower to flower. The sulphur yellow, black striped, swallow-tailed butterflies, with their elegant cutaway coats, that pirouetted up and down the fuchsia hedge, doing complicated minuets with each other, and the hummingbird hawk moths that hung stationary, suspended by a blur of wings in front of the flowers while they probed each bloom with their long, delicate proboscises. You know, that thing that looks like a tongue that pokes down. Proboscises. We'll go with that. I was exceedingly ignorant as to even the simplest facts about these creatures, and I had no books to guide me. All I could do was to watch them as they went about their business in the garden, or capture them so that I could study them more carefully at first hand. Very soon, my bedroom was filled with a battalion of jam jars and biscuit tins containing the prizes that I had found in our tiny garden. These had to be smuggled surreptitiously into the house for the family, with the possible exception of Mother, viewed the introduction of this fauna into the villa with considerable alarm. Each brilliant day brought some new puzzles of behaviour to underline my ignorance. One of the creatures that intrigued and irritated me most was the dung beetle. I would lie on my stomach with Roger, my dog, squatting like a mountain of black curls, panting by my side, watching two shiny black dung beetles, each with a delicately curved rhino horn on its head, rolling between them with immense dedication a beautifully shaped ball of cow dung. By the way, just as a segue, I think my cleaning lady, Rati, has disposed of my little piece of rhinoceros beetle that I had sitting on my windowsill. I did hear a shriek the other day when she was cleaning here, so I was outside. I didn't know what the shriek was about, but I think she chucked out my rhinoceros beetle, which, you know, I get that she probably thought it was creepy, but by the gods, I wanted to keep that. But it's possible he's just fallen on the ground, you know. I can't see it anywhere though. So I suspect he's been thrown out. And as an artist, a writer, and I can't really say I'm a scientist, but vague interest in science, I had plans on keeping that beetle piece because he was a model for something I was going to try and emulate. So people get creeped out by things that I sometimes keep. And I remember everyone being very creeped out when I had the partially mummified lorikeet beak years ago that my little Pomeranian kept bringing back in the house, no matter how many times I did actually throw it outside. But it was just the beak. It was like not that bad actually. Everyone used to overreact, something terrible. Anyway, I was destined to make something out of a lorikeet beak when Spirit told me to go and check on Charlie's grave, and there was the bottom mandible of her beak just lying there. So I did make something of it, and I wear it regularly as a amulet of protection and a memento mori of my beautiful Charlie. But that was the second lorikeet beak that the spirits kept presenting to me, wanting me to do something with. So yeah, I'm a bit annoyed about my missing rhinoceros beetle. He might have just blown down. The shriek I heard, her shriek, was something to do with something else. I don't want to accuse her of anything because she might not have thrown him out, but it's just odd that he's been on that windowsill for weeks and now has randomly disappeared. It's odd. Odd people of Earth. I mean, you have to laugh. But I'm not like in any way overly concerned, you know. I get it. People get creeped out and their instinct is to throw things away. Right. And I do love Rati. She's a wonderful woman. Like, I wouldn't be cross with her, but she should have just said, you know, that thing on the windowsill gave me the heebie-jeebies, so I've thrown it out. And I would have said, really? Could have asked me, I would have just put it out of your line of vision, put it away somewhere. So note to self, the next time the gods or the universe or the Holy One, or however you want to frame that, gives me some creepy, scary looking piece of cartilage, to hide it and not put it on full display. But I had it there because it was already dry, but I just had it there. I don't know why I left it there actually. I used to look at it occasionally though. It's almost like a reminder of my CPAP mask that I have to shove on my face every night. Kind of a whimsical little reminder. Sympathetic magic, people of Earth. That's what it was. It was sympathetic magic. But where were we? The curved rhino horn, rolling between them with immense dedication, a beautifully shaped ball of cow dung. To begin with, I wanted to know how they managed to make the ball so completely and beautifully round. I knew from my own experiments with clay and plasticine that it was extremely difficult to get a completely round ball, however hard you rubbed and manipulated the material. Yet the dung beetles, with only their spiky legs as instruments, devoid of calipers or any other aid, managed to produce these lovely balls of dung, as round as the moon. Then there was the second problem. Why had they made it? And where were they taking it? We're a bit squidgy, people, right? Give us a little bit of a twist. I wonder how that happened. Right, there we go. I solved the problem, or part of it, by devoting one entire morning to a pair of dung beetles. Don't tell me he's tipped that bowl over again. Refusing to be deviated from my task by the other insects in the garden, or by the faint moans and yawns of boredom that came from Roger. Slowly, on all fours, I followed them foot by laborious foot across the garden, which was so small to me and yet such a vast world to the beetles. Eventually they came to a small hummock of soft earth under the fuchsia hedge. Rolling the ball of dung uphill was a mammoth task, and several times the beetles' footwork was at fault, and the ball would break away and roll back to the bottom of the little incline, the beetles hurrying after it, and, I like to imagine, shouting abuse at each other. Eventually, however, they got it to the top of the rise and started down the opposite slope. At the bottom of the slope, I noticed for the first time, was a round hole like a well, which had been sunk into the earth. And it was for this that the beetles were heading. When they were within, a couple of inches of the hole. One of the beetles hurried ahead and backed into the hole, where he sat gesticulating wildly with his front legs, while the other beetle, with a considerable effort, I could almost convince myself that I heard him panting, rolled the ball of dung up to the mouth of the burrow. After a considerable length of time spent in pushing and pulling, the ball slowly disappeared into the depths of the earth, and the beetles with it. This annoyed me. After all, they were obviously going to do something with the ball of dung. But if they did it underground, how could I be expected to see what they did? Hoping for some enlightenment on this problem, I put it to the family at lunchtime. What, I inquired, did dung beetles do with dung? There was a moment's startled silence. Well, I expect they find it useful, dear, said Mother vaguely. I trust you're not hoping to smuggle some into the house, Larry inquired. I refuse to live in a villa whose decor consists of balls of dung all over the floor. No, dear, I'm sure he won't, said Mother, peaceably and untruthfully. Well, I'm just warning you, that's all, said Larry. As it is, he appears to have all the more dangerous insects out of the garden closeted in his bedroom. They probably want it for warmth, said Leslie, who had been giving the matter of dung beetles some thought. Very warm stuff, dung. Ferments. Should we, at any time, require central heating, said Larry, I'll bear that in mind. They probably eat it, said Margot. Margot, dear, said Mother, not while we're having lunch. As usual, my family's lack of biological knowledge had let me down. What you want to read, said Larry absent-mindedly, helping himself to another plateful of stew, which he had just described to Mother as being lacking in flavour. What you want to read is some Fabre, F-A-B-R-E, Still searching for my rhinoceros beetle mandible thingies. The rest of it was not there. Well, he's not here, is he? He's gone. He's gone to wherever black, shiny, beautiful, obsidian-like rhinoceros beetles go. Maybe she put it in here thinking that I didn't want it on the windowsill. No. I'm not all that upset. Don't get me wrong, it's just disappointing. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to keep it, people of Earth. There's a method in my madness sometimes. I don't actually know what I was going to do with it, that's why it was still sitting there. Is that an orb or a feather? It's a feather, isn't it? The birdie boys. Yes, it is indeed a feather. All right. I inquired what or who Fabre was, more out of politeness than anything else, because, as the suggestion had come from Larry, I was convinced that Fabre or Faber would turn out to be some obscure medieval poet. Naturalist, said Larry, his mouth full, waving his fork at me. Wrote about insects and things. I'll try and get you a copy. Overwhelmed with such unlooked-for magnanimity on the part of my elder brother, I made a point of being very careful within the next 2 or 3 days, not to do anything to incur his wrath. But the days passed and no book appeared, and eventually I forgot about it and devoted my time to the other insects in the garden. But the word why pursued and frustrated me on every hand. Why did the carpenter beetles cut out little circular pieces from the rose leaves and fly away with them? Why did the ants conduct what appeared to be passionate love affairs with the massed battalions of green fly that infested many of the plants in the garden? What were the strange, amber, transparent insect corpses or shells that I found sticking to grass stalks and to olive trees? They were the empty skins, as fragile as ash, of some creature with a bulbous body, bulbous eyes, and a pair of thick, well-barbed forelegs. Why did each of these shells have a split down its back? Had they been attacked and had all their life juices sucked out of them? If so, what had attacked them, and what were they? I was a bubbling cauldron of questions which the family were unable to answer. I was in the kitchen when Spiro arrived one morning some days later, as I was showing Mother my latest acquisition, a long, thin caramel-coloured centipede which I was insisting, in spite of her disbelief, glowed with a white light at night. Spiro waddled into the kitchen, sweating profusely, looking as he always did, truculent and worried. "I've brought yours mails, Mrs. Durrell," he said to Mother, and then glancing at me, "Mornings, Master Jerry's." Thinking in my innocence that Spiro would share my enthusiasm for my latest pet, I pushed the jam jar under his nose and urged him to feast his eyes upon it. He took one swift look at the centipede, now going round and round in the bottom of the jar like a clockwork train, dropped the mail on the floor and retreated hurriedly behind the kitchen table. "Gollies, Master Jerry's," he said, "what's you doing with that?" I explained it was only a centipede, puzzled at his reaction. "Them's bastards are poisonous, Mrs. Durrell," said Spiro earnestly to Mother. "Honest to God's, Master Jerry's shouldn't have things like that." "Well, perhaps not," said Mother vaguely. "But he's so interested in these things, in all these things. Take it outside, dear, where Spiro can't see it." "Makes me scarce," I heard Spiro say, as I left the kitchen with my precious jar. "Honest to God's, Mrs. Durrell, makes me scarce what that boy finds." I managed to get the centipede into my bedroom without meeting any other members of the family, and I bedded him down in a small dish tastefully decorated with moss and bits of bark. I was determined that the family should appreciate the fact that I had found a centipede that glowed in the dark. I had planned that night to put on a special pyrotechnic display after dinner. However, all thoughts of the centipede and his phosphorescence were completely driven from my mind. For in with the mail was a fat brown parcel, which Larry, having glanced at, tossed across to me while we were eating lunch. "Fabre," he said succinctly. I've decided it's Fabre, not Fabre or Faber or I don't know. Je ne sais quoi. Je suis désolé for my ignorance. Je suis un petit peu fou. Vous comprenez? Fabre. At this rate, I'm never getting to France, am I? But don't worry, I was never going to be getting anywhere anyway unless some miracle happens. Fresh out of billionaires with fetishes for luscious fat women of senior age and everlasting attitude. Someone wrote a very nasty comment about my fatness on one of my videos from about a month ago. I was most offended. And they wrote it in Romanian with lots of gibberish in between, so it was difficult to translate, which they did on purpose. Is that you, Livy or Scotty? Anyway, whoever it was someone the maturity of a gnat and very, very unpleasant. But you know what I replied? Oh, and left it at that. Because honestly, I could have removed the comment, but they took the time to write gibberish and something about a penis and what do I care? It's probably either a bot or a 12-year-old. But you have to be 16 to be allowed to look at videos now, aren't you? Yes, I believe you are. Well, anyway, a 16-year-old spotty boy in Mummy's basement wrote me a very rude comment, and because it was so rude, Google Translate didn't translate it. So I had to translate it because I'm nosy by nature. I was ever so slightly offended, but I thought, oh, I am fat, and what do I care? Someone who's so petty and nasty as to write nasty comments on strangers' YouTube videos. There's so much lack of couth in our world and so much viciousness and bestiality. It's really quite foul. What can I say? But whoever it was in Romania. So I have a Romanian fan stalking me now, writing nasty comments. Ah, smallest violin. Right, a Fabre, he said succinctly. Forgetting my food, I tore the parcel open, and there inside was a squat green book entitled The Sacred Beetle and Others by Jean-Henri Fabre. Opening it could be just Fabre, 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 Fabre. I can't do it. Haven't done that for a while. That used to be my signature mischief at clubs and music venues. But they didn't really like me, did they? So let's do it again, just to piss them off one more time. Right, back in my box. My fat, luscious box. None of you shall ever partake of. She simply didn't have the communication skills or the key. Opening it, I was delighted, transported by delight, for the frontispiece was a picture of two dung beetles, and they looked so familiar they might well have been close cousins of my own dung beetles. They were rolling a beautiful ball of dung between them. Enraptured, savouring every moment, I turned the pages slowly. The text was charming. No erudite or confusing tome, this. It was written in such a simple and straightforward way that even I could understand it. "Leave the book till later, dear. Eat your lunch before it gets cold," said Mother. How many pages have we got left? Feels like a very long chapter, and I'm tired. I'm tired, people are there. It's for shits and giggles, since my rubbish bin is very close to the windowsill, and I'm stubborn about things. Let's just see if it's been thrown in here. I won't yell at her if it has, but then I'll know that it bothered her and she tried to remove it from my windowsill. We've got empty chocolate packages, empty box. It'd be funny if it was in here, wouldn't it? It would be quite comical. My Rati, if you watch my videos, I'm not angry with you. I'm just searching for my rhinoceros beetle, because do you know how hard it is to come by those? It was gifted to me by the crows. It's just not any sort of average kind of gift. It's not worth diamonds or pearls or rubies or emeralds or sapphires, but it's rare. Rare. A gift from the crows. I can't see it, so she probably threw it in the other bin, and if that's the case, it's long gone, because I change the other out's kitchen bin more often than I change this one. And then there's lots of seeds, husks from the birdies when I clean out their little vacuum cleaner that I use to clean the seed husks from the cage. No, it doesn't seem to be in here. Oh, poor Mama T has lost her horn. I'm always in them, darlings. Well, what do they say, the philosophers? Everything is temporary. No use holding on. Must hold on while letting go. All things shall pass. Onwards and upwards, tally-ho and toodle-pip and all that jazz. Well, I was kind of, it just came to me that maybe it's in the bin, but it isn't. So now I shall have to reach acceptance that it is indeed gone. Something in here smells very sweet, very, very sweet. That's why I smelt my hands out. It's that sugary sweet smell. The leftover raisins that the birdies don't eat. Well, birdie boys, the rhinoceros horn is gone. Maybe the wind blew it in this direction. Maybe it's in here, because that's not far from the window. It's possible that a large breeze could have blown through the window and blown it down. Alas, I don't think so, people, though. I think it's well and truly gone. So, let us take a moment to mourn the disappearance of the rhinoceros horn. Right. Maybe it's got put into straw. No, I would have remembered putting it in the drawer. Or putting it somewhere safe. I left it by the window for a reason. What is that? A hand drill. Just wonder what that was for a moment. Right, that stays there next to that. It's just because it was black and shiny, I thought, ha-ha. But no, alas, no, darlings. Right, we'll carry on with the story because we've got quite a few pages. Excuse me to go. Burpee, burpee, burpee. Reluctantly, I put the book on my lap and then attacked my food with such speed and ferocity that I had acute indigestion for the rest of the afternoon. This in no way detracted from the charm of delving into Fabre for the first time. While the family siested, I lay in the garden in the shade of the tangerine trees and devoured the book page by page until by tea time, to my disappointment, I had reached the end. But nothing could escape my elation. I was now armed with knowledge. I knew, I felt everything there was to know about dung beetles. Now they were not merely mysterious insects crawling ponderously throughout the olive groves. They were my intimate friends. About this time, another thing that extended and encouraged my interest in natural history, though I cannot say that I appreciated it at the time, was the acquisition of my first tutor, George. George was a friend of Larry's, tall, lanky, brown-bearded and bespectacled, possessed of a quiet and sardonic sense of humour. It is probable that no tutor has ever had to battle with such a reluctant pupil. I could see absolutely no reason for having to learn anything that was not connected with natural history, and so our early lessons were fraught with difficulty. Then George discovered that, by correlating such subjects as history, geography and mathematics with zoology, he could get some results, and so we made fair progress. However, the best thing as far as I was concerned was that one morning a week was devoted exclusively to natural history, when George and I would peer earnestly at my newly acquired specimens and endeavour to identify them and work out their life histories. A meticulous diary was kept which contained a large number of flamboyant and somewhat shaky pictures, purporting to be of the specimens in question, done by me in a variety of coloured inks and watercolours. I love how you sing out to the lorikeets, my boy. Looking back, I have a sneaking feeling that George enjoyed the mornings devoted to natural history as much as I did. It was, for example, the only morning during the week when I would go to meet him. I would amble through the olive groves, halfway, because there's multitudes of trees, you understand, halfway to the tiny villa that he occupied, and then Roger and I would conceal ourselves in a clump of myrtle and await his approach. Presently he would appear, clad in nothing but a pair of sandals, faded shorts, and a gigantic tattered straw hat, carrying under one arm a pile of books and swinging a long, slender walking stick in the other hand. Yes, Kermie. The reason for going to meet George, I regret to say, was of an entirely mercenary nature. Roger and I would squat in the sweet-scented myrtles and lay bets with each other as to whether or not, on this particular morning, George was going to fight an olive tree. George was an expert fencer and had a quantity of cups and medals to prove it, so the desire to fight something frequently overcame him. What are you doing, turkey buzzard? He would be striding along the path, his spectacles glittering, swinging his walking stick, when suddenly one olive tree would become an evil and malignant thing that had to be taught a lesson. Dropping his books and hat by the side of the path, he would advance cautiously towards the tree in question, his walking stick now transformed into a sword, held in his right hand at the ready, his left arm held out elegantly behind him. As slowly, stiff-legged, like a terrier approaching a bull mastiff, he would circle the tree, watching with narrowed eyes for its first unfriendly move. And suddenly he would lunge forward, and the point of his stick would disappear in one of the holes in the olive tree's trunk, and he would utter a pleased "Ha!" and immediately dodge back out of range before the tree could retaliate. I noticed that if he succeeded in driving his sword into one of the smaller of the olive tree's holes, this did not constitute a death wound, merely a slight scratch, which apparently had the effect of rousing his antagonist to a fury, for in a second he would be fighting grimly for his life, dancing nimble-footed round the olive tree, lunging and parrying, leaping away with a downward slash of his sword, turning aside the vicious lunge that the olive tree had aimed at him, but so rapidly that I had missed the move. Some olive trees he would finish off quickly with a deadly thrust through one of the larger holes, into which his sword disappeared almost up to the hilt. But on several occasions he met with an olive tree that was almost more than a match for him, and for perhaps a quarter of an hour or so it would be a fight to the death, with George, grim-faced, using every cunning trick he knew to break through the defences of the giant tree and kill it. Once he had successfully killed his antagonist, George would wipe the blood off his sword fastidiously, put on his hat, pick up his books, and continue humming to himself down the path. I always let him get a considerable distance away before joining him, for fear he should realise I had watched his imaginary battle and become embarrassed by it. It was about this time that George introduced me to someone who was going to become immediately the most important person in my life, Dr. Theodore Stephanides. To me, Theodore was one of the most remarkable people I had ever met, and 33 years later I am still of the same opinion. With his ash blonde hair and beard and his handsome aquiline features, Theodore looked like a Greek god, and certainly he seemed as omniscient as one. Apart from being medically qualified, he was also a biologist, his particular study being freshwater biology. Poet, author, translator, astronomer, and historian, and he found time between these multifarious activities to help run an X-ray laboratory, the only one of its kind in the town of Corfu. I had first met him over a little problem of trapdoor spiders, a creature that I had only recently discovered, and he had imparted to me such fascinating information about them, so diffidently and shyly, that I was captivated, not only by the information, but by Theodore himself, for he treated me exactly as though I were an adult. After our first meeting, I was convinced that I should probably never see him again, as anyone as omniscient and famous as he was could not possibly have the time to spare for a 10-year-old. But the following day I received a present of a small pocket microscope from him and a note asking me to go to tea with him in his flat in town. Here I plied him with eager questions and breathlessly ran riot through the enormous library in his study and peered for hours through the gleaming barrels of microscopes at the strange and beautiful forms of pond life that Theodore, like a magician, seemed able to conjure out of any drab, dirty stretch of water. After my first visit to Theodore, I asked Mother tentatively whether I might ask him to come to tea with us. "I suppose so, dear," said Mother. "I hope he speaks English, though." Mother's battle with the Greek language was a losing one. Only the day previously, she had spent an exhausting morning preparing a particularly delicious soup for lunch, and having concluded this to her satisfaction, She put it into a soup tureen and handed it to the maid. The maid looked at her inquiringly, whereupon Mother used one of the few Greek words that she had managed to commit to memory. "Exo," she had said firmly, waving her arms. "Exo." She then went on with her cooking and turned round just in time to see the maid pouring the last of the soup down the sink. This had, not unnaturally, given her a phobia about her linguistic abilities. I said indignantly that Theodore could speak excellent English, in fact, if anything, better English than we could. Soothed by this, Mother suggested that I write Theodore a note and invite him out for the following Thursday. I spent an agonizing 2 hours hanging about in the garden, waiting for him to arrive, peering every few minutes through the fuchsia hedge, a prey to the most terrible emotions. Excuse me. Perhaps the note had never reached him, or perhaps he had put it in his pocket and forgotten about it and was, at this moment, gallivanting eruditely at the southernmost tip of the island. Or perhaps he had heard about the family and just didn't want to come. If that was the case, I vowed, I would not lightly forgive them. But presently I saw him, neatly tweed-suited, his Homburg squarely on his head, striding up through the olive trees, swinging his stick and humming to himself. Hung over his shoulder was his collecting bag, which was as much a part of him as his arms and legs, for he was rarely seen anywhere without it. To my delight, Theodore was an immediate, uproarious success with the family. He could, with a shy urbanity, discuss mythology, Greek poetry, and Venetian history with Larry, ballistics and the best hunting areas on the island with Leslie, good slimming diets and acne cures with Margot, and peasant recipes and detective stories with Mother. The family behaved much in the same way that I had behaved when I went to tea with him. He seemed such an endless mine of information that they bombarded him ceaselessly with questions, and Theodore, as effortlessly as a walking encyclopedia, answered them all, adding for good measure a sprinkling of incredibly bad puns and hilarious anecdotes about the island and the islanders. I don't know where it's coming from, but I've got a delightful, it's refraction from my sun catcher on the window. But can you see it on my book? This delightful pink. There it is again. Can you see it? The pink light flicking over the book, but it's coming from the crystals. Because science could be fairies. But no, it really is refraction from the crystals. But they're not pink. My dress is pink, and it's refracting this lovely pink little light. There's no I guess there's a slight pinky sheen on one of the crystals up near the top, so it's possibly from that one. But it's delightful, isn't it? My inner child still takes delight in strange and whimsical little things, because there must be magic in our world, people of Earth, to offset all the putrescence. There really must be. Otherwise life is just too boring and too ghastly and pointless. Right. At one point, to my indignation, Larry said that Theodore ought to desist from encouraging me in my interest in natural history, for, as he pointed out, the villa was a small one and already stuffed to capacity with practically every revolting bug and beetle that I could lay my hands on. It isn't that, said Mother, that worries me. It's the mess that he gets himself into. Really, Theodore, after he's been out for a walk with Roger, he has to change into completely clean clothes. I don't know what he does with them. Theodore gave a tiny grunt of amusement. I'm being told by Spirit to move things, little tiny wooden cabinet, and to move things back in here and put those boxes on top of the bookshelf. Let me show you what I mean. Up here, I'm being instructed to move them on my stepped cabinet here and rearrange it so to fit things in there, and then bring things that are in the spare room in here. But why, people of Earth? Why now? Why rearrange things now? It's a funny thing to be told just after I commented on the sweet little pink light on my book, and now it's gone, disappeared. See? So these little inspirations and musings and encouragements just come and go like the breeze. But odd. I guess I could move those things over here and bring things in that are in the spare bedroom. It's terribly cluttered in my spare bedroom. So there is that. I said, yes, you want to keep everything that relates to Titania's realm, to your silversmithing and your jewellery stock. You want to keep it all in one place. Like, it won't all fit in here, Spirit. It's impossible to fit it all in here. That's why it's spread out to the other room. There's a method in my madness. So anyway, that's their opinion, and my opinion is quite happy with the status quo, actually. So we won't fight about it. They'll nag me until I do it, though. They will. They'll nag at me. I'll have sleepless nights until it's done. If it's not an unreasonable request, I might oblige, but if I think it interferes with my free will and my self-expression as an individual woman, then I drag the chain. Anyway, just funny how that popped into my head, and I got the urge to look up there, that I'm feeling I've been told to move everything around. Very weird indeed. It isn't that, said, oh, I read that, about not having the clean clothes. I don't know what he does with them. Theodore gave a tiny grunt of amusement. I remember once, he said, popping a piece of cake into his mouth and chewing it methodically, his beard bristling and his eyes kindling happily. I was coming to tea with some, you know, friends of mine here in Pirama. At that time I was in the army, and I was rather proud of the fact that I had just been made a captain. So, you know, to show off, I wore my uniform, which included beautifully polished boots and spurs. I was rowed across by the ferry to Pirama, and as I was walking through the little marshy bit, I saw a plant that was new to me, so I stepped over to collect it. Treading on what, you know, seemed to be firm ground, I suddenly found that I had sunk up to my armpits in very foul-smelling mud. Fortunately, there was a small tree nearby, and I managed to grab hold of it and pull myself out. But now I was covered from the waist downwards with stinking black mud. The sea was, you know, quite close. So I thought it would be better to be wet with clean seawater than covered with mud. So I waded out into it and walked up and down. Just at that moment, a bus happened to pass on the road above, and as soon as they saw me, with my cap on and my uniform coat, walking about in the sea, the bus driver immediately stopped so that all his passengers could get a better view of the spectacle. They all seemed considerably puzzled, but they were even more astonished when I walked out of the sea and they saw that I was wearing boots and spurs as well. Solemnly, Theodore waited for the laughter to subside. I think, you know, he said meditatively and quite seriously, that I definitely undermined their faith in the sanity of the army. Theodore was a huge success with the family, and ever after that he came out to spend at least one day a week with us. Holy shit, it's $10 more than usual. My Optus full just went out. But yeah, I had to make that international call to those fucking people that keep billing me once a year. Avast. So that's the extra $10. So it's alright. $10 is better than, what was it they billed me? $90 or some outrageous fucking thing for a service I don't even use, haven't used for 2 years. Outrageous. Anyway, that was another battle. By the goddess, I'm exhausted from battling all the time. Struggle street, battle, battle, battle. Never mind. There'll be enough money to cover it. It's all good. Just enough money. By this time we had made innumerable friends among the peasant families that lived around us, and so vociferously hospitable were they that even the shortest walk was almost indefinitely prolonged, for at every little house we came to we would have to sit down and drink a glass of wine or eat some fruit with its owners and pass the time of day. Rati tells me it's like that in Indonesia where she comes from. When she goes home, you have to eat a little bit at each house around the village. And she said you're so full up and you're like, no, I can't possibly eat any more. So you just have to eat tiny little bits of each thing. Otherwise they get offended. Isn't that cool? Everyone feeds each other. I like that. Being fed. Indirectly, this was very good for us, for each of these meetings strengthened our rather shaky command over the Greek language, so that soon we found that we were fairly proficient in conducting quite complicated conversations with our peasant friends. Then came the accolade, the gesture that proved to us we had been accepted by the community in general. We were asked to a wedding. It was the wedding of Katerina, the sister of our maid Maria. Katerina was a voluptuous girl with a wide glittering smile and brown eyes as large and as soft as pansies. Gay, provocative, and as melodious as a nightingale, she had been breaking hearts in the district for most of her 20 years. Now she had settled on Stephanos, a sturdy, handsome boy, whom the mere sight of Katerina rendered tongue-tied, inarticulate, and blushing with love. Oh, how sweet. When you were invited to a wedding, we soon discovered the thing was not done in half measures. The first festivity was the engagement party, when you all went to the bride's house carrying your presents, and she thanked you prettily for them and plied you with wine. Having suitably mellowed the guests, the future bride and groom would start walking to what was to be their future home, preceded by the village band, 2 violins, a flute and a guitar, playing sprightly airs, and followed by the guests, all carrying their presents. Katerina's presents were a fairly mixed bag. The most important was a gigantic double brass bed, and this led the procession, carried by 4 of Stephanos's friends. Thereafter followed a string of guests, carrying sheets, pillowcases, cushions, a wooden chair, frying pans, large bottles of oil, and similar gifts. Having installed the presents in the new cottage, we then drank to the health of the couple and thus warmed their future home for them. We then all retired to our homes, slightly light-headedly, and waited for the next act in the drama, which was the wedding itself. Who's doing all that barking? I think it's not Sophie, it's their other dog. I don't know the dog's name. Oh well, doggies will bark when other dogs go walking past. Beauregard used to do that too. It's not really that big a deal. I just wonder, they don't normally bark that much. I just wondered what was going on. We had asked somewhat diffidently if Theodore might attend the wedding with us, and the bride and her parents were enchanted with the idea, since, as they explained, with becoming ingenuousness, very few weddings in the district could boast of having a whole English family and a genuine doctor as guests. The great day came, and donning our best clothes and collecting Theodore from town, we made our way down to Katerina's parents' house, which stood among olive trees overlooking the sparkling sea. This was where the ceremony was to take place. When we got there, we found it a hive of activity. Relatives had come on their donkeys from villages as far as 10 miles away. All round the house, groups of ancient men and decrepit old women sat engulfing wine in vast quantities, gossiping as ceaselessly and as animatedly as magpies. For them it was a great day, not only because of the wedding, but because, living as much as 10 miles distant, they were probably having their first opportunity in 20 years to exchange news and scandal. The village band was in full spate, the violins whining, the guitar rumbling, and the flute making periodic squeaks like a neglected puppy. And to this all the younger guests were dancing under the trees, while nearby the carcasses of 4 lambs were sizzling and bubbling on spits over a great chrysanthemum blaze of charcoal. I wonder what they mean by chrysanthemum blaze. Maybe because it was a big round fire or something like that. Poetic license, people have a poetic license. I do it too when I write or speak fluidly and fluently and articulately, throw in a few poetic licenses. Makes life interesting, doesn't it? I hate being bored, just say. Aha, said Theodore, his eyes alight with interest. Now that dance they are doing is the Corfu dance. It and the tune originated here in Corfu. There are some authorities, of course, who believe that the dance, that is to say, the steps, originated in Crete, but for myself I believe it is an entirely Corfu product. The girls in their goldfinch bright costumes revolved prettily in a half moon, while ahead of them pranced a swarthy young male with a crimson handkerchief, bucking, leaping, twisting and bowing like an exuberant cockerel to his admiring entourage of hens. Katerina and her family came forward to greet us and ushered us to the place of honour, a rickety wooden table that had been spread with a white cloth, and at which was already sitting a magnificent old priest who was going to perform the ceremony. He had a girth like that of a whale, snow-white eyebrows and moustache and beard so thick and luxuriant that almost all that could be seen of his face were 2 twinkling olive black eyes and a great jutting wine-red nose. On hearing that Theodore was a doctor, the priest, out of the kindness of his heart, described in graphic detail the innumerable symptoms of his several diseases which God had seen fit to inflict him with, and at the end of the recital laughed uproariously at Theodore's childish diagnosis that a little less wine and a little more exercise might alleviate his ailments. Really is quite simple sometimes, isn't it? But people don't want to see the forest for the trees. I had a lovely walk last night round the block. It's only 10 minutes. I stopped to talk to Avril for quite a long time actually, because it was a beautiful night. It was a kind of night where the sky is almost this indigo blue rather than night black. It was really pretty. And while we were talking, the possums came out and eyeballed me and got in the tree above my head and shook things up. I said to Avril, I hope it doesn't pee on my head. And she laughed. She said, I was thinking the same. But even the wild possums come to visit me. It's actually delightful. So, we chatted for a while, and then I continued my walk home, which, where she lives isn't so far from my home. But anyway, it was lovely. I really need to do it every day, not just, every second or third day. I need to motivate people of Earth. A nice walk in the evening, passing pleasantries with people in the neighbourhood. It's a nice way to spend, the evening before you're heading off to watch TV and then fall into bed alone, just saying. But anyway, just had to reinforce that. But it was actually very nice. Larry eyed Katerina, who, clad in her white bridal gown, had joined the circle of the dancers. In her tight white satin, Katerina's stomach was more prominent and noticeable than it would have been otherwise. This wedding, said Larry, is taking place not a moment too soon. Do be quiet, dear, whispered Mother. Some of them might speak English. It's a curious fact, said Theodore, oblivious to Mother's stricture, that at a lot of the weddings you will find the bride in a similar condition. The peasants here are very Victorian in their outlook. If a young man is seriously courting a girl, neither family dreams for a moment that he will not marry her. In fact, if they did try to, run off, both his family and the bride's family would be after him. This leads to a situation where, when the young man is courting, he is chaffed, that is to say, has his leg pulled by all the young men of the district, who say that they doubt his prowess is as a potential father. They get the poor fellow into such a state that he is almost forced to, prove himself. Very unwise, I would have thought, said Mother. No, said Theodore, endeavouring to correct Mother's unscientific approach to the problem. In fact, it is considered quite a good thing for the bride to be pregnant. It proves her fecundity. Presently the priest heaved his vast bulk onto his gouty feet and made his way into the main room of the house, which had been prepared for the ceremony. When he was ready, Stephanos, perspiring profusely, his suit half a size too small for him, and looking slightly dazed at his good fortune, was propelled towards the house by a laughing, joking band of young men, while in a group of shrilly, chattering young women fulfilled the same function for Katerina. The main room of the house was extremely tiny, so that by the time the bulk of the well-larded priest had been inserted into it, plus all the accoutrements of his trade, there was only just about enough room for the happy couple to stand in front of him. The rest of us had to be content with peering through the door or through the windows. The service was incredibly long and to us incomprehensible, though I could hear Theodore translating bits of it to Larry. It seemed to me to involve quite an unnecessary amount of intoning, accompanied by innumerable signs of the cross and the splashing of tidal waves of holy water. Then 2 little garlands of flowers like twin halos were held over the heads of Katerina and Stephanos, and while the priest droned on, these were exchanged at intervals. As it had been some considerable time since the people who held these garlands had been to a wedding, they occasionally misinterpreted the priest's instructions, and there was, so to speak, a clash of garlands over the heads of the bridal pair. But at long last, rings were exchanged and placed upon the brown, work-calloused fingers, and Katerina and Stephanos were truly, and we hoped, irretrievably wed. The silence during the ceremony had been almost complete, broken only by the odd drowsy chuckle of a hen or the shrill and slightly repressed squall of a baby. But now the stern part of the ceremony was over, and the party blossomed once again. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. The band dug down into its repertoire and produced gayer and more sprightly tunes. Laughter and raucous badinage arose on every side. The wine flowed guggling from the bottles, and the guests danced round and round and round, flushed and happy, as inexorably as the hands on a clock face. The party did not end till well after 12. All the older guests had already made their way homewards on drooping donkeys. The great fires, with the remains of the sheep carcasses over them, had died in a shroud of grey ash, with only a sprinkling of garnet embers winking in it. We took a last glass of wine with Katerina and Stephanos, and then made our way sleepily through the olive groves, silvered by a moon as large and as white as a magnolia blossom. The Scops owls chimed mournfully to each other, and the odd firefly winked emerald green as we passed. The warm air smelled of the day's sunshine, of dew, and of 100 aromatic leaf scents. Mellow and drugged with wine, walking between the great hunched olives, their trunks striped with cool moonlight, I think we all felt we had arrived, that we had been accepted by the island. We were now under the quiet, bland eye of the moon, christened Cophiotes. The night was beautiful, and tomorrow, we knew, another tiger golden day lay ahead of us. It was as though England had never really existed. And I'll be back tomorrow, no doubt, with chapter 2 of the Bay of Olives. I hope you enjoyed that, people of Earth. I certainly did, and I'm quite tired now, so I might have to have a little bit of a rest. And it's cooling down at long last. It's a very hot day today, very oppressively humid and hot. So if it cools down pleasantly by the time the sun goes down, I might take one of my little promenades around the neighbourhood again. Certainly couldn't hurt. Alright, bye for now. Have a beautiful day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the space-time continuum. And remember, as always, my favourite motto, nunc aberrandum et bastardos, and never let the bastards grind you down. But it's a beautiful day and a beautiful life. In Italian it's tutto bellissimo, and I am grateful and content and peaceful and sanguine. Bye for now.